Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is another episode of the Not Your Enemy Speak Out Sessions. I'm your boy, Mr. Jared O. White, here with my girl, my partner in crime, Shannon. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Happy Friday.
Happy
But
Friday.
we also have to shout out to DMX, RIP DMX. I don't know when this will be played, but on today we lost DMX. He is a rap veteran, a rap legend. So definitely wanted to shout him out and pay our respects.
Yes. Yes. What a legend.
Facts. Um, this afternoon, on this episode, it's just Shannon and myself. I love these
You too.
just you and I conversations.
Yes.
And we're gonna talk about something that she and I have touched a little bit on the show, but also offline with our friends and together. This thing called imposter syndrome and how it affects us, where it comes from, why does it keep showing up? I feel like you brought that to my attention when we were doing the Not Your Enemy collection last year,
Right.
and you mentioned sometimes I doubt myself, and I was like, you know what? I do doubt myself.
I'm right there with you.
And I didn't know why, and I didn't understand why. And then when I started to go down that rabbit hole, and I've heard the term before, I think it's one of these buzzwords that people are bringing up a lot, but it does have a lot of validity. Um, and I have been faced with it a couple of times throughout my career, so I'm glad that we're having this conversation today.
Yay. So I'm really excited for today. I'm really excited for this conversation. So I figured the best way to start out would be to actually define or describe what imposter syndrome actually is. And so Google's our friend. And I'm going to read two.
Shout out to the
So
Googler.
shout out. Imposter syndrome is loosely defined as doubting your abilities and feeling like a fraud. It is disproportionately affects high achieving people who find it difficult to accept their accomplishments. Many question whether they are deserving of their accolades. So that's one description of it, and then another one that we have is oh wait, hold on, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You see how quick stuff just gets deleted? Okay, here we go. So some of the common signs of imposter syndrome include self-doubt, an inability to realistically assess your competence and skills, attributing your success to external factors, other than you. So those were two like definitions of it. I think a lot of people do it and are unaware of that's kind of what it is.
Hmm.
I think it's really common in millennials.
Right. And
But
I'm shocked about how it affects high achieving people because you would think that that's the group that wouldn't
nope.
would know that what their skill sets are and what their talents are, and they can be put in certain situations, whether it's new to them or uh, part of their daily routine, and that they will shine bright, but it's not.
Yeah, I think that that kind of goes in line with like we are our own worst enemies. We are our biggest critics, and so I think the high achieving people, I'm gonna put us
Oh,
in that
definitely.
category.
We
That
check that
we,
box.
you know what I mean? That
I'm not
we
just stressed out not to be a high achieving person.
right, but we literally put so much um stress and stuff on what we do that of course we're our worst critics. We're like we could do better, or we feel like we're failing, or we feel like we're not doing enough, because if we're on that level, then
Mhm.
there's always, when you're on a pedestal, there's always someone to knock or something to knock you off.
Right.
And I think that that is something that, high achieving people feel, that pressure of like I got to stay where I'm at or
Hmm.
get higher. Um so what are what are the triggers for your imposter syndrome? Like what makes you doubt yourself?
Anything that I do creatively. That whole gambit of things, because there's so many different levels of uh, creativity and what you're doing and how you bring it about, what it looks like. Everyone has a different eye. What you like, someone else may. It's just whatever. You just have to really own that space. And that was something that growing up, I was always into just being a smart guy and being very book smart and a little bit of street smarts from growing up in the hood. But having not that eye of like creating something, or I always thought art or creativity was drawing or painting. But then when
Right.
I realized I had that eye for how things look and what looks good, and I started to ease into that a lot more. But creatively is where I feel like my imposter syndrome kicks in the most, because there's so many people in that field, so many people in that lane. I didn't go to school specifically for design or styling or fashion. These are all the things that I picked up along the way because I just like the way shit looks, you know.
Right.
And understanding that there's people who are educated in this and have been doing this for years, decades. You know how sometimes it is, how dare I come in and do these things. When it comes to work and my 9 to 5 and my career, that's just been something that I think I have been growing over time. So I understand what I can do, and I feel really good about that. You know. Uh,
Right.
Tell me about yours. What about yours?
So I think for me, if we even okay, so if we go back to college, right, and being like in charge of the radio station, there was always like this doubt of, hey, someone could be better than me that's doing this job, and like I don't know what I'm doing, and it's a lot of self doubt and like reflection on uh, what my capabilities are versus others. So it's a comparison of, okay, well that person probably knows more me knows more about this, or so that was an issue for me, I think, early on that's kind of transcended over time. And so I was always questioning, like, am I the right fit? Am I the right person? Could there be someone else in charge that can run this radio station better than me? I mean, I was very successful. No, I'm patting myself on the back for that, but I'm just saying the thought process there was like, I am messing this up. And, then transitioning out of college and going to, a 9 to 5, um, you know, the baby boomers of the world were kind of in the management roles, and a lot of their comments were about millennials, and oh, millennials think they're lazy, or they just expect to come in and not work and get all this money. And so I literally wanted to debunk that, and so I worked. And so even when it got to the point where I was like, hey, I'm doing all these things, do can I get more money? And there was a lot of reflection of like, well, do I deserve this money, or is it just me? And am I being a millennial, stereotypical, just wanting more, more, more without doing the work? So it was like a lot of like self-doubt. And I still run into that today where I'm like, do I deserve this money, or is this just me feeling like I'd like, I'm doing nothing, but I need to get all this glory and raise. But I feel like now I'm a little bit more mature, but those thoughts still like linger, where it's like, am I really deserving of this promotion, or this merit increase? Like, it's always a doubt because I'm really positioning myself based off how other people see me, versus like my success is driven off how other people see me, and not internally. And I don't know how to get out of that when you're in corporate America, because
Well, let's talk. You mentioned corporate America. Let's talk about the 9 to 5 and the lack of representation sometimes that causes an imposter syndrome, because you necessarily don't have anything to model after. Was that kind of some of your issues as well?
yeah, I mean, I think I mean, for a long period of time, in my first 9 to 5, like I was the only, you know, black woman, black person. And then when I was, introduced to other black people, it was maybe like 5% of
Mm,
the company, if
mm,
that. And we were all in different stages, different degrees of our lives, like, married with children. I was 20, again, in my 20s, first job. So it was just like, um, there was little guidance. And the guidance I did get was from somebody that was, um, a white woman. She was in her late 20s, that was giving me advice, and it was very helpful advice, but also our outcomes were different. Like, um, I didn't get as much support or movement when I made an argument. Like, hey, like I have to prove that I did this, this, and this to get a 5% raise. You know what I mean?
mhm,
And I have to come up with a report and a presentation. And even that was like, okay, well, am I asking for too much, just
Right.
questioning like, is this too much? Am I doing too much? Am I being too much? Am I, not showcasing my worth in that? But like it was a lot of like, okay, or should I be here? Am I a subject matter expert even though I know this stuff like the back of my hand?
Mhm.
Like I could always be better. I could always do better, which I think goes back to, being an overachiever or high at a high level of achievement.
Right.
You're always like, I can do better. I could be better. I can learn more.
Mhm. True. Then you
What
get
are
to
your
you do
thoughts?
you know?
I said, what are your thoughts on like 9 to 5? I know we can talk all day about that.
I went into working corporate America with the idea of, like, I'm gonna get out of it at some point, so let me just it never really got to me on that level when I was first started out. No, I should say now. When I first started, I was an assistant for about 10 years of my career. So I just had someone that pretty much told me what to do or how to do certain things, and I just took that as an opportunity to learn as much as about the business. Uh, but when you're starting to learn things over time, you're like, well, I'm actually learning these things. I know what the hell I'm being requested, what's being requested of me, and what I need to do. So it's difficult um, when that imposter syndrome starts to set in because you're like, well, I know this stuff backwards and
Right.
forwards. Like I've been a
Yes.
part of these conversations. But I think a lot of times it does come back to the lack of representation, and you're not seeing anyone to model things after, and then you're realizing that you're trailblazing a bit of a lane for yourself because you don't have anybody else to
Yeah.
model after. And that's where sometimes I feel like I have that imposter syndrome because I'm not the only person, but then sometimes I don't because I'm like, it's just me. Like I built this, I got myself here, so I
Right.
clearly know what the hell I'm doing. If I get to this point, it may not look like everybody else's or whatever. The journey may not be the same, but I did use my own salt to get here.
So yeah, I feel like some days like we flip flop where it's like I'm like
Mhm.
you are more than capable. What are you talking about? Like when you're doubting yourself, I'm like what are you saying? Like
Right.
you know this like in the back of your hand. I also think it's easier to like and tell me if I'm wrong. I think it's easier to see the success
Hmm.
and the capabilities and the worth and all that stuff in somebody else,
Hmm.
even if you have your own imposter syndrome versus you like reflecting on yourself, saying, "Hey, I'm capable. Like I am where I'm supposed to be. Like
Hmm.
this is me. I am knowledgeable, you know, um, and not fear success. I feel like people fear success because they fear failure,
Yeah.
but it's only internal. Like I tell you this all the time. Like I see other people like win. Like I want you to win. I want you to be successful, and I see that, and I can encourage you. But for me, it's like I can always use some work. I can use some work, but it's true though.
When you're already doing everything that you could possibly do. So does that so how do you feel? Like that makes when do you have those moments when you feel like you can do some work? Like when does that pop in the most for you?
Do some work like on my like for me
Yeah,
personally.
yeah.
Um, I don't know. Like I don't think it's a time. I think it's more of like a feeling. And I think for like what you said, you feel most like an imposter creatively wise.
Mhm, mhm,
I actually think it's the opposite for me. Like I'm like ain't nobody can tell me nothing.
mhm.
Like I'm because if you're creating, I'm creating. You don't have to like it. You know what I mean. But I
Right,
think it's mine. I think when I'm doing the work for others on behalf of others, there's a lot more added stress, added like, oh my god, am I doing this right? But if
sure,
it's just if I'm creating and I'm the leading force, I
sure,
think there's a little bit less of an imposter because I'm doing me versus like having to go and and play a role in someone else's kind of environment, circus,
sure,
whatever you want to call
sure,
it.
sure. Fact. And I think that's what it boils down to because sometimes you do feel like you're playing a role
Yeah,
in somebody else's playground, so you then have to fit yourself into this mold, and then
right.
that leads to another breakthrough here on the Not Your Niece Speak Out sessions. If that makes sense to me.
Right. And then like the pressures of or the how someone else measures success,
Right.
right? Because we might not measure it the same way. And I think that if you're in the corporate world, you are measured by someone else's success, not your own.
True.
Um,
I think when I talk about the creative portion, it's because it's being out there for display. Like now
yes,
we're out here, we're
it's
putting
judgment.
yes,
Yes, yes. But
and
it's
then
but it's yours, so you're creatively like if we use Not Your Enemy for example, like we were like, oh, let's hire like a graphic designer, and then you started to create, and it was like once your babies came out and your designs came out, you're like, oh my god, like
right,
I love like you rock it. Like I don't care. We do care, but like in the mindset, it's like this is still great. This is dope. This is what I created. You have a love and a affirming love for it.
right,
I don't necessarily think that's the same when I go to work 9 to 5. It's just like it's a job, but I
mhm,
want to do it well.
yeah.
Um, so do you find like, and I think we kind of talked about this a little bit. Do you find that you compare yourself a lot to others and others' achievements like equate to your own?
It drives me. It makes me want to do things differently. I See, I come from very different worlds. I'm an only child. I was always the loner kid, so I was always on the outside looking in, and that may have been me placing myself in that position. But I always was the one growing up, observing and like taking bits and pieces. Oh, I like that, or that looks cool, or that looks interesting. So it wasn't a level of comparing. It was more so, how can I get that? Like, what can I do to for me to get that, so that I can either emulate that, do it better, and make it my own. Like that's how I'm always looking at things. Um, Social media, of course, has been jumping ahead there, but that has been, of course, that aids or adds to the that feeling of comparing. But it's always to figure out how I can do it myself and do it better.
Yeah, but so okay, I'm gonna play devil's advocate on
Okay,
this because yes, you are a loner, only child. Like you create your own lane, right?
right, right,
But do you ever look at someone else's lane like, oh, okay, I need to get I like how I know we do it.
right. Yeah, to inspire. Like, how do we do that? How do we take that and make it our own though? Like that's my thing.
It's never a form of stress though.
Sorry, my can you hear that ding dong?
No.
Okay, good. Is it ever a form of stress?
Stress or do you
Like when someone's on a beach, yeah.
well, I'm just saying because we could
I want
all
some
run the
sun.
race. You could all run the race and be like look to the left and be like, yo, how their sneakers still not dirty and mine are. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like
I
if
get you. I get you. I get you. Yes, when it comes to trying to figure out, like I said, when I'm trying to figure something out, like, okay, so why isn't this moving like that?
yes.
Does it come with some signs of stress? Possibly, but not to the point of like losing my mind over it, I should say.
I'm gonna pull this. We're gonna pull this out of you because we've had these separate conversations. So imposter syndrome means you are doubting yourself and your
Okay, yeah, all right.
capabilities.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
So
I get what you're saying.
if you are running the race and you're like pulling creativity, but if you're looking and comparing yourself to other achievements,
Uh-huh.
you're like, well, I'm doing the same thing, but it's not working. We're gonna be totally transparent on this episode. Or you
Well,
feel like
that's
we're an
the key, Shannon.
imposter.
That's everything that we do.
Right. It's like we feel like we are imposters, like
But once again, it still goes back to like, well, how can I figure out like what are we like? If you're so much stress, the stress is causing me is like trying to figure out, well, what the fuck did everybody else do?
right.
You know what I'm saying? So like I've sat back and looked at everybody else's shit, but I'm like, well, how did y'all get there? Like, what else do I need to do? But then when you realize everyone's looking at you with the same type of
Right. I said that. I was like, again, like, oh, you're doing so great. Really? Because we don't feel it. Like I'll give example because Jared's being shy, but this is not your speak out sessions and this is a safe space to be honest. So we are doing this podcast, right? And we
okay,
are
that's okay.
having these conversations about, you know, hey, like listen to our podcast. And me and Jared were like, we're not really podcasters. You know what I mean? But like we are podcasters. But
Yeah,
the self-doubt is like, okay, we don't got the right mics yet. We don't got our
I don't know. I
studio.
got the right mic.
I'm talking about overall. Jared is trying to sugarcoat this so hard. He is sugarcoating this. I'm not
Because we
having
got
it.
2,500 downloads, and I'm feeling myself.
But
But see, but that's also
that took
okay.
us.
So how? Let's talk about that real quick. How about? Aren't there times where you feel like I'm not in the imposter syndrome mood right now? Don't you have those moments where you're like, I'm feeling good about my shit today? You
Yes.
know what I'm saying?
Yes. I mean, I do. I think that okay, so let's talk about that.
Yes.
There are wins and losses when you have imposter syndrome. Like when
Okay.
you like, okay, so we've gotten 2,500 downloads, or you got that promotion, right? Then the feeling of like, yeah, I did it, and then you in there and you're like, what's next? Or
Yes. Yes.
like,
Yes.
should I really have $2,500? Like, what
No,
is
I
it
don't know
really
about that. Now, that
accurate?
ain't never happened. Now, no. Me.
Like, are we deserving? Really, people want to hear us talk. Like,
Yeah, I get
you
you.
are,
Yeah.
you are full of malarkey right now. That's fine,
Malarkey.
malarkey. Um, so, but even as a job, like your new job, you're like your new promotion. It's like,
Yeah.
do I really like? We've had conversations for your 9 to 5 where you're like,
You're right.
you
You're
got
right.
a new
And I
position, and
think the
you're
thing is
like,
also like I've been in things now. We've been doing it for a little bit of time, and I think that's what goes back to a lot of it. Where this general feeling of this is that it doesn't last long, and
yes,
it just but then it goes to the next thing that you're working on.
right. So I don't think
I
so. I will say I don't think imposter syndrome for everybody is
mhm,
like I feel this way all day,
all the
every
time.
day,
Right.
24/7.
Right.
I think that there's certain instances that it triggers you to feel like you're an imposter. You don't belong. You're not worth it. You're not capable. It's I really like there was an article about it just questioning whether it was a medical disorder. It's not.
Mhm,
It's a result of
mhm,
something else. So it
mhm.
could be result of self-doubt, like it said in the thing, like you're doubting yourself, you're doubting your capabilities. Therefore, imposter syndrome when you're in a corporate, place, or you're creating something, you feel like you are not capable of success. You feel like you're not worthy of the success that you have. And so I think you can have feelings of that and it can go away, but that still was imposter syndrome. You feel like you're not meant to be where you are. I just preached the whole word just now, didn't I?
You did that.
I mean, I think we both do it.
Yes,
We
we
both
do it
have
all
our
the
ways.
time. Yes,
Yeah,
we do. And I'm being silly, but we do it all the time. I just there are just those moments where when I tap into like, okay, well, it's having the courage to push through. Like I
right,
had that doubt in the
right.
beginning, was unsure about it. Didn't whether it's podcasting, whether it's designing the t-shirts, whether it's hopping on the IG live, there was doubt on my behalf every step
Yes.
of the way. You were the one that was championing a lot of these things and coming up with those ideas. But now that I've done them, I'm like, oh, I'm actually cool with it. Like, I don't care what the reaction is or isn't. I
Right.
did it. So then once that monkey's off my back, I'm like,
Whatever. Yeah. Right. So let's talk about that real quick. So
yes,
Instagram Live, right?
yes,
What we do.
the lies of like IG live.
Like, do you feel like social media plays a role in how or impacts like how you view yourself and your success? Like, especially
110.
what we're doing.
Yes, 110%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know why though.
because the one now we're going. I'm backtracking a little bit. It's just an influx of things and content and people and ideas, and everyone has a place to speak and give their ideas, and everyone's an expert on something in social
Right.
media, and you feel like you need to measure up to that when all you need to measure up to is you yourself and what you got.
So I'll say this, and I just thought about it. I think for social media, what happens is it makes people, especially if you are, creating anything in a safe space, because we talk about there's no original idea.
Mhm.
I think that social media makes it apparently obvious, or makes you probably feel very unoriginal.
Mm,
Do you know what I mean? Where you're like, yeah, I got this dope idea, and then all of a sudden your timeline's flooded with the
mhm,
same shit, and you're like, what?
mhm.
okay,
And
like,
it's diff-
and then
and it's
someone might do it better
right.
in your mind.
Right. And it's difficult because I think we remember original thought. Like we are from I
Right.
think we're like that last generation where we can actually see where something started,
Right.
and even if there were some references to that thought, it was still new. Like it was still as new as it could possibly be. But
Right.
there is no original thought anymore. And it's hard when, like I said, when it gets to your create, especially that's when that creativity bug gets into me because of the fact that I want to create something that's new and different and
Mhm.
evokes a new emotion, but
Right.
sometimes it come across just as the next person's. But then again, did it land that way? It does it feel like that because it's still new from you to your people, and why does it
Right.
even matter how it feels to somebody else? Sometimes you just need your core people to be
Right.
in your to be the people that are watching you and rooting you on. And I think when and if we're talking about imposter syndrome based on social media, when we start to concern ourselves with everybody else, that's when we get messed up
Mhm.
in this, you know. And I
Right.
think for us, that's where we have found our sweet spot. It's like we have our people who know what we're doing,
Yep.
they're supporting it. We have people who may be curious about what we're doing,
Right.
and then we may have people who just don't fuck with it, you know.
Yeah.
But if we keep messing around and focusing in social media world the three lanes over, that's where we get messed up. But yes, it doesn't. I didn't even answer your question. Does it impact the view of myself?
Yeah.
Yes, some days it
Yes.
has. Um, and what, like I said, that's because sometimes I want to go sit out on the beach and I want a nice car outside, and it's more so the FOMO shit.
Yeah,
But
but
then when
I
you realize how much it took for people to get that one picture,
yeah, right. But I also think like it's kind of a little bit like imposter.
we all are
It's
imposters in social media.
yeah, like I feel like imposter syndrome sometimes is a FOMO of some
Yes.
of some sorts, right? You feel like you're missing something. You're missing
Mhm.
out on something. Something is missing in you in order for you to
Mhm.
be
Yes.
successful. So like social media,
So glad that you said that.
because I don't know, social media to me is like so I go back to the presentation we did for the high school students. You're gonna doubt yourself. We are in the stage of like you are constantly met in the mirror with yourself, and then you're also um constantly seeing other people do stuff and promote things, and social
Mhm.
media has just made it where people aren't moving in silence. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but unfortunately, what that does to the psyche is it's like, oh, let me see what they're doing and let me compare. And oh, why are we not there yet? And oh, why are we, you know what I mean? Like, I think that, yes, of course, like, I think anybody that says like social media doesn't impact them is like full of shit.
Right.
No, like,
Right.
no
Yeah,
shade.
I can't shit that.
But you know what I'm saying? Like you're full of, and I think that people consciously make a decision not to be on social media so that they're not impacted,
Yes.
understanding that if they are on social media, there is going to be an impact. There is going to be a like, well, comparison of why I'm this way, why they're that way, or that's successful, and I do the same thing, and I'm nowhere near that. Like I feel like that comparison is natural because we're human and we're
Right.
very like self-absorbed people. It's not no shade, y'all. I'm just saying we are very much like, hey,
You should be, because
right,
everybody else is for self.
right.
Um,
But yeah, that's that's what I'll
no,
say about it.
I think you hit on something, or you touched on it with like the whole just like if you are not somewhat shaped by what's happening in the social media world, you are bullshitting yourself. But how do you stay current? And this is getting off topic because I'm curious. Like, how would you even stay current if you're not even on social media?
See the catch 22 with that. See the like in social media is part of my job. So
Yes.
eh, then you got to separate it because it's like I work on it. So a lot of people that do social media for work like really are not about it otherwise, and some
Mm,
people are. I think that if you're trying to stay current and present, if this is the industry that you want to be in, it's going to be very hard for you to
right.
ignore or talk about social media doesn't impact
Right.
you. I think what needs to happen is, I think that, therapists talk about this. My therapist has, it's like you need to make sure that your social media is catered to you.
Facts.
And so, meaning that, if something is going to trigger you, understand that maybe you should cater your social media so that you're not
Mhm.
triggered in a negative way.
Mhm.
And you have all control of who you follow, what you see, what you get tagged in, like all that stuff
Right.
is you're able to control that. And so that's the only control that you can do to filter how
Mhm.
social media impacts you if you have to use it.
Right.
Um, but me, I just don't care. I'm like, I get distracted and I'm like, but
You
I
go
like
down
people
that
on
rabbit
Instagram.
hole.
Yeah, but I mean, for me, social media is like, I think now we're gonna really get off topic, but it's fine. We're gonna come back.
Yeah.
I think for me, and I talked about this in another podcast episode, social media for a while was like I was putting on the fluff. Like you only gonna see this stuff. And so when I started to post real things, people had an issue with it. And then I was like, oh my God, like I'm not successful, people are judging me. But like the
Mhm.
overwhelming thing of like I can't even post a freaking quote without people, what's going on with her? Is she
Gotcha.
okay? And
Gotcha.
so for me now, social media is like I don't really care. Like I'm gonna post whatever I want, and it's no one's ever gonna come to your face directly and say it. It's always like backdoor conversations anyway. When we're talking
Mhm.
about somebody on social media, we don't talk crazy, but we're like, oh, did you see them post that? Did you know what I mean? We never say that to them their face. It's
True.
not like you text them and
We'll
say,
just send it
hey,
to you.
like,
We'll just send it in someone else's DMs and be and talk shit.
right. So but do you know what I'm saying? Like nobody goes to the person like, hey, you okay? So it's like, why am I gonna spend my time caring about what other people are feeling with my post when I know my intent? And if we're really cool and you really are invested in what I'm trying to say, you would message me. But you don't, so I don't care.
Right.
That's
And the
how I feel.
moral of the story is that stop we have to figure out ways to stop caring about others,
That's really
people's
what it is.
opinions
Yes.
about us, what you're doing, because it really doesn't matter. What someone eat don't make me shit.
Right.
And that's such a hard I don't understand why we can't understand that because I still deal with that to
Yes.
this day that's something that I'm still struggling with even when people feel like I'm being the most confident or the most
Right. Right.
whatever, like I'm still trying to figure it out myself. I'm glad that I can help other people reach their confidence, but
Yes.
just know that I'm
We struggling with y'all. But I think that's like just to do a full circle moment. I think that imposter syndrome is kind of tied into a thought or a care of what other people think.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Okay.
because if you're an imposter, you feel like you're
Right.
impostoring somewhere into
Yes.
somebody. And it could be, yes, you feel like you're not adequate, but what makes you feel that way? And it comes back to like, okay, it's somebody what someone else thought. It's how
Right.
someone else made you feel. Like, okay, when I was growing up, I didn't feel capable. So like now I'm an adult and I still don't feel capable. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I still feel like that's a major factor is people care too much what people think.
Right.
I'm
And
one of them.
talk more about that inner voice because that's what it is. That imposter syndrome is that little guy or little woman
Mhm.
or little being in your head that is telling you you can't, you shouldn't. Oh my God, they're looking. Oh my God, you
Right.
idiot, messed up. That's that little thing in your head,
Yes.
and you just have to essentially turn that inner critic into your biggest cheerleader.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, you know, uh, in regards to um a previous episode with Yeti that's coming out, but uh affirmation, affirming yourself,
Mhm.
telling yourself. I mean, I think we talked about this a lot this season, but just telling yourself you're capable, telling yourself you're worthy. Um, keep affirming yourself until that voice is shut down because that's really what it is. You walk into a room, you need to be confident in yourself and your capabilities, what you're bringing to the table. Anywhere you go, I don't care if you're doing your own business, if you're working a 9 to 5, if whatever you're doing. Like I think I said this in the beginning of the episode. We are our own worst critics. Nobody could be meaner to them, to you than yourself. At least in my case, I'm just being honest. But um, so I
And
think,
that's facts.
yeah, like once you get to the point where you're like, okay, even if you got to give your pep talk in the morning, in the
Mhm.
afternoon, and evening, if
Even
that's what you got to do, you just be like, I'm capable.
mhm.
Like, and you could be real specific. Like, I'm capable of doing this job today. I'm capable of getting I'm worthy of a raise. If
Mhm.
I'm worthy to receive everything that's being given to me right now. Like
Right.
all that stuff um is important, I think, to like combat imposter syndrome because a lot of people feel like they don't deserve things. And that starts with you. You got to fix that in you.
I did my affirmations before we hopped on this podcast, and that's why I was bullshitting talking about.
That's why you were like, I don't know what you're talking about, Shannon. I'm like, oh, are we gonna do that? Okay, got it, got it, got it.
So,
So
so we. Oh, or did you want to do the next one? I was gonna say to
yeah,
round out on a positive note. Like, when do
yeah.
you feel most capable? When do you feel like I am champion through this thing?
Um, after I do my affirmations, and like I said, I feel like in the creative space, like once I get like you've seen me in my mode,
Hmm.
I just be like, nah, ain't nobody touching this. Like I think that when I get out of my own way
Hmm.
and I'm free to be creatively me, that is where I feel most capable because I know like I don't, I've always been a creative person.
Hmm.
It's kind of been put on the back burner in some cases, but I feel like that's where I thrive the most and I feel most authentically me. And so when I'm able to do that or work that, like that is where I'm like, hey, I don't really care. Let's go. You know what I mean? There's not a care in the world. It's more of like, okay, I know I got this. I mean, even if I don't got it, it's not a thing of I feel like an imposter. I'm just gonna work till I do get it. You know what I mean? There's no self doubt there. It's just like, okay, we got it. We can do it.
Mine is always right after I'm done whatever it is that I was.
Yes.
Because that's like I feel like I did it. Now, what else can I do? Like, what
Right.
else can I like accomplish real quick, or like
Hmm.
what little thing that I've been? Because like once you accomplish that big thing or that big
Yeah.
task, then you can accomplish that little one, and you're ready to put something big on your plate. So I would say that is definitely when I feel like most capable, and I'm fortunate and happy that we have not let any of our inner saboteurs, our imposter, whatever you want to call it, stop us from doing what we have been working on now.
Right.
And I hope that everyone else doesn't do that either. Just keep going.
Right. Like this is like our presentation with the high schoolers, but like
Right.
even more in depth. So I just feel like, we've had such a great season for this podcast and the motivation is like just keep going and we keep learning and we have pushed aside like any of the self-sabotage stuff that we stereotypically might say to ourselves. I think it's great that we have each other to kind of remind, one another when we're doing that and maybe like the motivation we need to be like, nah, we good. We got it. Let's go.
Right.
Um, and so that's it. I'm so excited we did this episode though.
I'm glad. I'm glad we did it too. And just to also let people know, if you're suffering from imposter syndrome, make sure you're giving yourself credit for all your accomplishments.
Right.
That's like the big one.
Great, man. Give
Give
yourself
yourself some grace. I'm so happy we did this. I can't wait for our next one that we have coming up with just you and I. Um, and we're rounding out the season really nicely. It's been another episode of the Not Your Enemy Speak Out sessions featuring your boy Jared and your girl Shannon. Make sure you check this out on the Not Your Enemy Brand YouTube page, Not Your Enemy Brand IG page, and check out the site, notyourenemybrands.com. Talk to y'all next time, y'all.
Bye guys.